What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Last Principles. I'm your host, M.A., former member of the ICOC, the International Churches of Christ. Joined in October of 2000, escaped in November of 2013. We got another episode of Cult Conversations tonight. My guest tonight is Nicole Huynh. How are you tonight?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you here. So, before we dive in, what I like to do in the beginning is, there was always something that made us all either more susceptible to being caught up in a cult, high control group, whatever you feel like calling it, or made it more attractive to us, stuff that went on in our lives prior to that led to us getting there. So what was going on in your life? Right. Well, maybe not just right before, just anytime, anything that would be relevant to you joining the ICOC.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've obviously had some time to think about this and just wondering what drew me in. And I would say my personality in general is one that likes black and white answers, mostly because I don't mess up. So I get a lot of anxiety around performance. And so I just want to be told what to do so I can't fail. And my mother knows this about me. And so even as an adult, if I want her approval, she won't even give me her opinion because she, wants me to be okay in the gray areas of life. And even just with this concept of good, better, best, not everything has a right or wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think when I realized, and I'm still a Christian, right? Love God so much. But realized I wanted to be in Christ. I found this group that was, one, really nice, but two, seemed to have all the answers, and they presented it in a way that felt very black and white to me, which satisfied some of my anxieties, but not in a super healthy way. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that set me up for that. There's other things that go into it that were more draw you in and keep you tactics. That's my personality, but I think that's probably in my makeup what contributed to me staying as long as I did.
Gotcha. You sound a bit like me because in hindsight, I didn't know this at the time, but I feel like I needed structure. And then I think I was also searching. Well, I wasn't actively searching. I had questions in my mind that I wasn't actively going after, but I always wondered, okay, we got so many religions, we got so many brands of Christianity. What's right? What's wrong? One of these got to be right, and these others got to be wrong. Now, I wasn't searching for them, but that was a question in my head. So when I started studying the Bible, aka getting indoctrinated, I feel like those were answering my questions. So I'm like, oh, I finally got an answer to this thing. But yeah, so you mentioned things that kept you, that drew you in and kept you in, because we all, however long we stayed, whether we stayed for 13 years like I did, for however long you did, whether you came in, said hell no, and left, or if you came in and however long we all stayed, we stayed. We came for a reason, and we stayed for a reason. Or as a lot of current members like to remind us, oh, it wasn't all bad, was it? So what was the not bad for you?
I would definitely say the community and the people. And it's interesting because I've had a number of conversations with friends about what keeps a toxic system going. And it is actually the good people, because if a toxic system was just full of unhealthy people, there would be enough red flags that no one would come in or stay.
Right.
The innocents who were kind of also swept up and were wonderful friends, but also helped perpetuate the system and the methodology. And so, you want to hold on to those relationships, and you think, I know that you love God and I love God, so surely we can work this out. I think the other thing, and this is less about the good and just more about who I am as a person, my favorite vocabulary word is boundaries. Because boundaries aren't bad, right? They're things that protect us and keep us healthy and safe. And I think from the beginning, even though there were things from the day I was baptized that I saw were off, I just told myself, I can thrive here as long as I have boundaries. And we can get to that later, but we know that those with boundaries don't do well in a high control system. I was never the golden child. I was always the
Man.
weak and strong or the rebel. So I wanted to try that, but I mean, it worked, I guess. I stayed for 10 years.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would say the people and then my thought that I could set boundaries.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Boundaries did not exist in that place at all.
Yeah.
Speaking of boundaries, I messaged you about this a while back, but I really appreciate you helping me learn something about boundaries a while back. As you know, I did not take it very well back then. I wasn't ready for it. I just wasn't ready. But as a father now, I realize how important that is. Like I tell my kids, I haven't had to enforce this with any adults yet, but we all have that thing where some adults think, oh, your kid has to greet me, your kid has to hug me. And again, I haven't had to enforce it yet, but my kids know I'm not going to make them hug somebody that don't um they don't want to hug. If they don't feel comfortable about it, I'm not going to make them do it. I'm not going to be that parent. Yeah, and I think it was a shock for me. It touches my primary love language. I grew up in a big hugging family, and of course that got amplified getting into the ICOC, which is a weird. I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but like on one hand, everybody was a hugger, but on the other hand, you had the side hug. I'm like, which irked me to death because I I never had any thoughts of anything impure with hugging anyone until I got there. I've said many times before on this channel, they taught us to struggle. So I think on one hand, for me, I just wasn't prepared to have anybody like hard stop, be like, nah, don't hug me. So it hit me a little hard. And then also, speaking of the lack of boundaries, what I had witnessed before was, say we had several times I've had guys who came in, and when they first start studying the Bible, we all hugging them on, and they're like, nah, I ain't with that. I ain't with that. And at some point between then and when they get baptized or a little bit after, they're heavy bro hugging with the rest of us. So I think subconsciously that kind of enabled that in me. And I was just like, oh, whatever. She'll eventually be a hugger. Nah, Nicole got boundaries.
Funny. Yeah, I think I'm that way with my all the little kids in my life, even the ones that are my family.
Mhm.
We all have moods, and so if they pull away or I say that's okay. I'll just wait. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, because the ICOC was I was actually, and I'm sure people on your channel are familiar with this term by now, but I was discipled a lot.
Oh
Boundary.
yeah.
Preferred to give people high fives
Mhm.
or fist bumps, or even just wave or say hi, especially new.
Yeah.
I felt particularly overwhelmed in large groups. And so
Oh yeah.
especially in crowded environments where my anxiety was raised, I preferred not to have a bunch of touch.
Yeah.
But even beyond, it's interesting because it's cultural throughout the ICOC, wherever you go. And
Mhm.
it got me in trouble quite a bit.
Yeah.
I stuck to it all 10 years. To many people's dislike, but I tried.
Yeah. I'm glad you stood up for that. And it's funny that as someone who violated that boundary myself, as I look back on my own, I struggle with setting boundaries. So that there may be a little deeper thing with me there. So like just hearing that you stuck with it, that's inspiring to me. Like as someone who, yeah, I had a hard, my spine was not developed at all when I first joined. So it was just like certain things I always look back and I'm like, yeah, me now would not have let that fly. I would not have let this thing be imposed on me. Yeah, I've grown a lot with it, but it's still something I have. It doesn't come natural to me. Setting and enforcing boundaries, I would say, that does not come natural to me. So it's something I'm still growing with it. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that you didn't give in at all.
But I also think it's interesting too, though, that you talk about how you felt like you weren't ready to set boundaries yet at that time.
Mm-hmm.
This particular organization, the International Churches of Christ, they target young people whose brains are fully developed and emotional maturity yet. So maybe boundaries was somewhere I was mature, but I was, of course, immature in many other ways. And helping college and campus students or really young adults when they're asking all these philosophical questions and trying to find out their identity, that's when the church itself and tries to define who you are. And And I think that's a vulnerable time for all of us. And I think that's
Right.
where we were maybe taken advantage of for where we were at in our age in adulthood.
Man, yeah, I feel like I just finished talking about people that get targeted, and that in those one of the groups. I think my last video I did on sharp people. I think you haven't heard. Actually, maybe you did, because it was a whole lot more prevalent before the whole letter, the whole sharp people thing. But it was just like young college students get targeted, and sharp people get targeted because they want, they want to make the church look good. They want to make the gospel attractive. They ain't nowhere in the Bible, but anyway. But yeah, so I was like, wow, yeah, just bringing back memories, bringing back recent memories.
We go way back, Myron.
Yeah, yeah. So you said you were in for 10 years, right?
Yes, I think you were there from my day one
Yeah,
back in 2000, was at 13.
yeah, I think I remember you being in a cast when I first met you, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
good memories.
and I remember just being it resonated with me because maybe a few years before I had broken my toe, and I had my foot was in a walking boot for a while. And you hearing that you were a dancer too, I was like, I feel her pain because I couldn't dance. Well, I was hard-headed. I danced in my walking boot. Yeah, I remember dancing with someone, and I mean, of course, you go out salsa dancing. It's not exactly the most well-lit room, and I had my walking boot was black, my pants were black, and the person I was dancing with, she was like, "Yeah, you're so good." I'm like, "Wait till I get my walking boot off. You didn't even know."
Just you wait.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, so 2013, and you said 10 years.
Just shy of 10 years. So my husband and I exited um, because we were kind of forced out over our engagement.
Yeah.
He's from outside the ICOC, which is not really tolerated by the community. They consider those baptized elsewhere to be Christians, and he was baptized at a worship conference. Actually holds very similar beliefs as me, so we were very equally yoked. Those was so important to me, right? But I found a good Christian man. We got pushed out, not happy. That would have been, I would say, probably July of last year, and a really vulnerable time for us. Got engaged, so we kind of went into engagement and then marriage, really not having a community. But yeah, it was recent for us.
Wow. So 2022, about 2022 then, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna pause there for a second. Everybody at home, I did a video recently because I've had a few people, not current members, of course, who would say, "Hey, you're talking about all these topics that, these things aren't happening anymore. We've changed so much. You need to put disclaimers in your videos. You need to get your facts straight." So that's why my intro was longer than it normally is, like stating when I joined and stating when I left. Because I'm like, look, y'all, don't come at me that like I don't know what I'm talking about. I've been here. So I was here before the letter, before there were some changes. They weren't enough.
Of course, there were improvements.
Yeah. So the fact that you were from 2013 to 2022, and we're still speaking the same language here. Everything we're talking about, you're not going over my head. I'm not going over yours. Everything, even if they're not shared experiences, I'm like, it wasn't my experience, but I know somebody who did. Just to let y'all know at home, it ain't changed enough. It ain't changed that much. This is still relevant. Anyway, had to get that rant out of the way.
Well, the DNA is still there, is kind of what I've been saying, is the language you hear.
Yeah.
Just the way of doing life. I think intentions are still there for the most part, but I would just say misguided good intentions. But yeah, the
same.
DNA is still there, and I don't know the DNA is ever going to not be there.
Yeah, the best way I can say it, and I don't mean this to sound violent, but I'm like, it needs to be burned down or rebuilt. You really can't. I think even after the letter happened, I was one of the people who said, "Oh, we don't need to like fully destroy this. It just needs to be reformed." In hindsight, nah, reform was not the way to go. Hearing you and your husband's story, it reminds me a lot of mine. Like, we, excuse me, I made the choice to leave because of it, because I knew it wasn't gonna last if we stayed. And it's funny, we joke about it sometimes. It's like she was willing to stay with me. She was willing to come to ICOC with me.
He was too. He was in it till I said I was ready to leave. He knew it
Yeah.
was not. He knew something was very wrong, and he was very,
Mhm.
but he loved me enough to not uproot me spiritually until I was ready.
Yeah, amen to that. He's a keeper. He's a keeper. Then I like to say my wife saved me from the cult, because I left because they told me, dude told me verbatim, and you might be able to guess who it is when I tell you. He verbatim told me, you can do what you want, but you can't do it here.
I'm sure who said that. Yes.
Now I told him into his face, like, you know what, I'm gonna pray on this. I'm not gonna make a snap judgment, but in my mind, I had, for weeks, I got like Dr. Strange with the time stone. I had gone through this scenario a gajillion times and had already decided what I was going to do. So I was like, this is not just me wanting to date somebody, some random girl. She was the one, and we both felt that way about each other. So I was just like, this is it. So sorry, gone, bye. But yeah, just so many parallels with our stories, basically. So you left about last year. Now, let me see, I had a few different places I wanted to take this from there. What were some red flags you noticed before that? Because I'm like, I get the feeling you might have stayed had this not happened. With that's not, because I know that was the case for me. Had Naya not come along, I might still be there.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think for me, I do think I was on my way out, but I needed someone to go with me. So I will say that before I answer your kind of red flags question, that something I think you and I both know is that leaving this community means being cut off.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what gets people to stay is they scapegoat. It's called scapegoating, right? They'll use someone, cut them off in a really hardcore way. Like I'd seen my friends drug up before the church, letters read out loud about their sin.
Yeah.
Be given rules. Like if you talk to this person, even by text, you will also be kicked out, which I never listened to. I wasn't about, go against my conscience. I would rather switch ministries, but somehow I still stayed within the sisterhood of churches. So, I think I had actually recently been pushing the envelope quite a bit. I had joined a couple of Christian dating apps. I think I knew that my future husband was not within the walls of the ICOC. I knew it. Or he was going to be like-minded like me and help me leave.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I was at when I met my husband. And I had been really championing this idea. I had been encouraging women to like open up to friendships and relationships outside of this church. I think it was my last ditch effort to stay.
Oh my goodness. No, I'm joking.
I had ministers calling me because their member, like I was making their membership struggle. So I was super vocal on the date. They had a dating group. It was a private group, but it was very big. It had like almost, I think, 4,000 people in it, or 5,000, something like that. And I was really pushing the envelope for what I thought to be healthy at the time. And I think it was only a matter of time before I just met my husband and out. But prior to that, going back to what I said earlier, red flags from day one. I remember the day I got baptized. It was so funny because I remember I was on crutches. So you remember I definitely had a cat.
Yeah.
And I remember going up the center aisle, talking to some of the women, and they were like, so we've got maybe come this day, Bible talk on this day. And they started listing things like, so we're going to expect you to be there, right? And I was kind of like, I'll try, there's so much going on.
So they didn't beat this into your head before?
No, they did not. Interestingly, they got me baptized. And so I remember saying like, I'll come every Sunday, but I will probably pick one or two things to do during the week. And then basically I'm going to manage my time. And that did not go over well.
Not at all. I can only imagine. Like,
it was not, that was not going to be okay.
Did nobody tell her this wasn't optional? Nobody told her this.
Basically. But then I think that's when the grip started to come in. So I remember, like, I gave, there was a young college, like, brother, a guy who needed a ride to the airport, but it was like 10:30 at night. He was taking a red eye, and
yeah,
there was nothing weird about it. He was a buddy of mine. I got in so much trouble, and he got in so much trouble. And I feel like that is after the 10 p.m. curfew. And I'm thinking, I am 20 at this point. I think I was 23 years curfew. Like,
I'm grown.
I'm grown. He's grown. And then those regulations just kept getting tighter and tighter. And I noticed the more I resisted them, the more I was in trouble. And I actually remember a woman, I was saying, like, this isn't working for me. I was actually thinking about going to this other church. It was quite a bit more liberal, but still within the ICOC.
Right.
From where you and I went to church, Myron. And the sister pulled me aside and was like, I'm not letting you do that. Absolutely not. Because that church is too liberal, and you won't go to heaven if you go there. Now, that woman,
I'm not letting you.
She used that language because she later had to go back and apologize to me after she got mistreated by the church and got pushed out. I was one of the people she called to be like, I was wrong for the things I said to you. I remember that conversation. I tried to control you, and I'm so sorry. And this was actually before all the movement started. More recently. This was a long time she apologized to me. So fast forward over 10 years. I mean, I would say red flags galore, which is really hard for me to say out loud. But, like, I remember being assigned a discipler that I didn't feel super comfortable with. And when I tried to set some boundaries with this person, like, I remember basically saying, like, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed right now by the amount you're trying to talk and the questions you're asking. So I'm going on a vacation with a friend. How about we talk when I get back? And this was not acceptable to that person. They wanted to talk now. And I just said, I'm going to talk to you. I'm not saying we'll never talk again. As a matter of fact, it's in 5 days, but I need some space right now. And this person had the nerve to call my therapist. She knew who my therapist was and tried to get my therapist, who basically tried to manipulate me through that relationship.
That's a HIPAA violation, ain't it?
It would definitely violate her oath and private health data. And so my therapist said, I can't even confirm or deny if that person is my client. And I would definitely discourage you to not make requests like this because it's not ethical. But she called me therapist more than once. And so it's like things like that were popping up all throughout my time. And I think basically they just keep the fear of, well, if you leave and you get taught false doctrine. And I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase, but, you know, better to be in a broken church than your soul to be at risk going church elsewhere. So they made you feel like, well, if you are right about this stuff, I'm screwed eternally. And so despite all those red flags, I think what probably released me from that control was when I started listening to the Bema podcast. It is a Christian Jewish man who walks through a teaching of the Old and New Testament from a Eastern perspective.
Ooh, yes,
we strongly misunderstand the Bible, reading on a proof text, like cherry picking English, 21st century lens, like Western, all of that. Like, we really meddle a lot of stuff, and it allowed me to open my mind to trusting God enough with my soul, with every decision I make, saying, I'm going to make this faithfully. Please show me if it's wrong. I'm going to step out on faith. It made me a lot more comfortable doing that. And I was able to start letting go until we reached the climax of my husband and I getting pushed out.
Please send me that when you get a chance. That sounds amazing, because
we're both huge fans.
Just realizing just how Americanized our faith is over here, just how we look at stuff through a lens that it was never meant to be looked through. And I've only started at the tip of that iceberg. I know it goes way deeper in that water than I think it does. So I'm just like, any help with that? That's
yeah. And I think this concept that he teaches, that, like, truth is evolving, which doesn't mean that there's no absolute truth, because at the end of the day, there are clear right and wrongs, but that over time, like God walks with us, and part of the journey of faith is truth being revealed to us and learning more and going deeper. And a lot of the Jewish people really enjoy that process. So he tells this story about two Jewish rabbis who are arguing about a text, and God gets so tired of hearing them argue. So he comes down and he says, I'm going to solve this for you. And they say, go back to heaven, because they don't want the answer. They want to wrestle with it and be on that journey with God. And I think that's probably what.
Wow. I won't go too deep into the book, but I just it reminds me when you said that truth is evolving. Again, not that there is no such thing as absolute truth. Some things are absolute, some things aren't. I read almost 2 years ago now, God and the Gay Christian, and I was already on the road of, I don't believe this is. At that moment, I was like, you know what? I don't care what the Bible says. I'm not going to treat this group of people the way that we typically have been treating them. And I was already leaning towards this may not actually be wrong. And that book, I kind of hate saying that it was a game changer, because that was a thought I had. And then I looked at the back and it said it was a game changer. I'm like, I don't want to be just saying it because the book said it. Anyway, part of it, I'm not going to say it because I don't want to misquote it, but suffice it to say, there was a bit of it that was talking about truth evolving, like being willing to adjust our beliefs when we get new evidence. Like, I think back then they mentioned, everybody thought the earth was flat, and to believe that it was round meant you weren't a Christian, that you weren't a believer, because that contradicts that whole story about the sun staying still because somebody wanted to win a battle or something like that. So they were so hung up on that it translated to, if you believe the earth is round, you ain't a real Christian. But you wouldn't think of saying the earth is flat now. Well, some people would, but you wouldn't think of calling the earth flat now, and also tying that to your faith. But that's how it was back then. But like you said, it's an evolving truth, because all of a sudden, whoa, we find out that this ain't what we thought it was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow. What else was I going to say? That it's funny when you mentioned the sister who said, "Oh, I'm not going to let you leave." I thought about a particular person, but when you mentioned when you mentioned the rest of the story, I was like, nah, that's probably not who I think it is. But I remember just all that you were talking about, that, you setting your boundaries, you not letting people control you. I joked about how Naya was willing to come with me, but we both joke about how we wouldn't have lasted there. Yeah, I'm the extrovert. I'm the introvert. She's the extrovert. She's type A. I'm not. Like, I didn't even know there were other types before I heard somebody say they were type A. She would not have been in control. Like, I mean, she by no means, she's not belligerent. She's not like aggressive and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, she would have definitely pushed back. She would have done exactly what you would have done. And
girl after my own heart. Love it already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, when I told her about the whole encouragement dating thing, had we stayed and had we got together, that wouldn't have flown with her. Like, she literally told me, she was like, look, I wish they would come to me and say, I got to go out with this person. She's like, no, I'm here for him. Okay.
And that is okay. It is perfectly normal. Two adults, they like each other, date, and try it out, make a decision.
Yeah. And going back to something you said earlier, you mentioned about how when we leave, we get cut off. I was fortunate that I texted the brother who gave me that ultimatum, and I said, hey, if I leave, is this a disfellowshipping? Because I know what disfellowship means. And he told me that no, because it would be your choice to leave. This does not count as a disfellowship. So I'm like, okay, cool. Excuse me. I still would have made the same decision, but that made that decision a whole lot easier, because I'm like, okay, now I don't have to risk having my entire family get cut off from me. I don't have to worry about, are people gonna, there was still some rumblings, but my roommate stayed with me. Both my roommates stayed and, continued to stay in the apartment. I mean, they were gonna kick me out. My name's on the lease and I got a master bedroom, but they I didn't have to worry about, hey, people making them move out. I didn't have to worry about people not returning my texts or blocking me, anything like that. So I just realized I was very fortunate in that. That's not most people's experience when they leave. They get told that you can't contact the person anymore, don't hang out with them. Cool people like you still contact them anyway. And I don't think I ever cut anybody off like that either. But I think coming up soon, I remember hearing this way back, with the whole whether or not the church is a cult thing. Somebody, and this is back when I might have still even been in Tallahassee back then. Someone said, we're not a cult because cults are easy to join and hard to leave. We're hard to join and easy to leave. And I believed it back then. I only half believe it now. I do believe it's hard to join because you got to go through a rigorous indoctrination process, so it's not easy to join, but it's hard to leave. Actually, probably harder to leave than it's easy to leave physically because you're not in a compound hold up somewhere. You're not being held against your will. But like you said, if you've been cut off from your family, if you've been shown that this is your new family now, and that if you leave, they're going to be cut off from you, whole bunch of other things like that actually makes it hard to leave.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of the things I have learned, again, through this FAMA podcast, right, and that it's safe to challenge the story or say something doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
That it is a healthy thing to do, because that actually unlocks answers. When you know the character of God is not lining up with what modern Christianity is telling you about really anything.
Yeah.
It's healthy to say, God, I know who you are. I know your love, and this doesn't make sense. So I'm going to sit with this. And it made me really comfortable in really challenging anything the church said. And sometimes I'd be like, oh no, that makes sense. Like, I'm with that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I had to say, and even still today, I have to say, I don't know about that, but I'm okay not knowing. I don't need an answer because I trust God in the story. And then there is the other side, which is why I'm going to change the narrative on that. There's a different way outside of this modern Western Christianity. And in doing that, a lot of times I would get, part of the high control group is they want to control the narrative. And God bless my mother, who taught me that even people you disagree with are super healthy to absorb their perspective because they probably have valid points. You don't know everything, and the truth is somewhere probably in the middle. And it's just okay to hear things you don't agree with and take that in respectfully and peacefully. And so I actually, and you may know how controversial this was in the ICOC, I listened to other teachers, other Christian teachers outside of the ICOC from day one, and was kind of open to other types of teaching. And they would go to extreme measures to kind of quote unquote punish me for that. I visited a church. I had a friend, he had left the ICOC, and he was visiting a local church in our area and just wanted me as a friend to go with him. And so he was attending their new members class. He's like, it's a big decision when I'm trying to find a home church, and I'm biased, obviously. I want to hear your perspective. And then there was one other friend he had come, and the church, I wasn't going to hide it. I wasn't going to broadcast it either, but they knew I went to this other church outside of the ICOC, and I was actually asked to step down as a small group leader because I was so excited to be a small group leader, mostly because I thought that's where I can make some change. I'm not going to make anyone tell me things they don't want to tell me. I'm going to be a safe person. I'm going to encourage exploration. I'm going to meet people where they're at. Like, this is my one shot at like changing things from the inside out. Just space for anyone, no matter where they're at in life, what their beliefs are. Like, there's always a seat for you at the table, and they already didn't like that. I was doing things their way, and that's fine. Like, if you're not doing things the way an organization wants you to do, they can totally ask you to step down. But when they found out I visited this other church, I was out. My role was over.
Can't have the small group leader going to other churches when we're trying to prevent, like, you're setting a bad example.
Exactly what I heard. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Man, I love that you mentioned how you wanted to make that change from the inside, saying, I'm not going to make anybody tell me something they don't want to tell me. It reminds me of how, I had no concept of this. Shoot, I just barely started getting a concept of this after I left. But just the idea that this whole confession culture we had, or still that is still there, confessing your deepest, darkest things to somebody you might have just met. Like you're lucky if you're confessing it to people who've been in your studies the whole time, but you might be, you might get, like you said, you got assigned a discipler that you weren't comfortable with, but you were probably expected to confess all your sin to them. And I look at what I know now. I mean, I'm no mental health expert. I glean a lot from my wife, but it's like no one is going to be vulnerable with someone that hasn't shown them that it's safe to do so with. But how many situations do we get put in the ICOC where we're called to confess sin, to be vulnerable with somebody who barely knows us, if at all?
Absolutely. I think a good resource for anyone listening is the book Safe People. It can help inform, it can give you a thought process or a lens in which to ask yourself, is this a safe leader? Is this a safe peer?
Yeah.
Is this a person? And I think that book is really powerful and written from a mental health perspective. And no, if you don't feel safe or comfortable sharing something, I definitely say, like, no one ever needs to be forced to confess anything.
Right.
If you want help, need to talk about something, and you go to people you choose, of course, right? But yeah, that confession culture, again, that's like another way, like, I think my parents just really got me in trouble, is if I didn't feel comfortable, I wasn't doing it. And I would find every polite way. I'm from the South, right? We met, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd find every bless your heart way to say no. And it still didn't work out. So.
Oh, bless your heart. Bless your heart. The Southern polite FU. Yeah. Or it can be. It's all purpose. It's all purpose. I always have to ask a lot of my guests how they dealt with this particular thing. How was the whole encouragement date thing presented to you, and how did you handle that?
It was interesting for me because the demographic of the church that you and I went to.
Yeah.
It was predominantly Black. I think I was I was only one of like 4 or 5 white people in the church.
Yeah.
And my introduction to it was very interesting because I had been there for about 6 months and I had not gone on any dates, nor did I find that was weird though. Like,
yeah. It shouldn't have been
to.
Weird, but we get told we got to go every Saturday, but.
Yes. And then the church, someone asked me, who was in leadership at the church, like, how are your encouragement dates going? And I'm like,
what are those?
I don't know what you're talking about. And so they went around and started asking brothers, why aren't you taking Nicole out? And it's, for as indoctrinated as the church could make people, these guys were like, I'm not, like, no offense, I'm not attracted to her. She's not the kind of woman, like, I want to find someone from my background or my culture. That's not what I'm attracted to. Like, I don't want to take Nicole out. And I was like, fine, great. Like, I don't want you to take me out, like, if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Leaders took such exception to that and made it this whole really uncomfortable thing. And it was all these extra layers. And when really it would have been totally fine with me otherwise. And so then they started kind of making people take me out, which was super awkward.
Yeah.
And then one really gracious guy, he's married now, was a good friend of mine. I met everyone in the church through a flag football team. He'd been on my football team. He was like, hey, I just want to, like, hang out with you. Can we go grab coffee and just be friends? I just want you to feel like you're still included. Sorry, this whole conversation got so weird.
Yeah.
And he took me out for coffee. So I think that introduction, it wasn't like someone was like, oh, this is supposed to happen, and then I did it. It became this whole escalated thing.
Yeah.
And so after that, I didn't really like the idea. Eventually, when I got to Los Angeles, I guess at that point I was more accustomed to it. But I kind of, it's interesting. I eventually started going on them, I would say about 4 or 5 years in, but I ended up having some really unsafe experiences. And I think this is why this is a horrible way to, well, not just horrible, but unsafe way to promote dating.
Yeah.
Brain in it, right? I ended up with a brother who had like a total emotional breakdown in the car, and he was already mental health issues, and he hit the gas really hard and floored it and was going like over 100 on the 405. And people in the car were like, hey, calm down, take a breath. And he was like locked up, like freaking out.
Wow.
And then I had a date with another brother one time who just got really angry about a couple of things. And then I just felt really uncomfortable and unsafe. And I was talking to my therapist about it. And she's like, you can just take an Uber home next time that happens. Like, forget what your says. So I don't know that I ever had even like decent experiences with that whole concept. It was weird from day one about what it was made to be about and how it was forced on me. And so I think that's probably a big motivator why I went back and even challenged the dating culture and just was like, oh, if you like someone, date them. If you don't, and date outside the church. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it was super awkward.
It definitely answers my question. The beginning of that explanation was actually, I feel weird saying this, it was actually somewhat refreshing to hear the fact that those brothers were saying, I don't want to take her out because I'm not attracted to her. I'm not interested in her, because it was so ingrained in us that it was that just that level of dating was not about the attraction. It was about, encouragement. And y'all at home, go back and watch one of my old videos, because I could go on forever about the misuse of the word encouragement. Like that verse in the Bible has nothing to do with dating, but
no, it doesn't.
Fast forward to our ministry, dating and encouragement became synonymous with dating. Like that was the only valid method of encouraging a sister, Correct. But if you wanted to take me out, all of a sudden now there's other ways of encouragement, because you can't lead the relation anyway. So to hear that those brothers did that, I was like, okay, because I do remember being at some hangouts or whatever, and we'd always get at some point get on that conversation, and we're like, dang, why do we have to go out with people that we don't like? Why do the brothers have to ask it for every Saturday? Why do the sisters have to say yes? It's like, that's what you described is what dating is supposed to be. So it was refreshing for me to hear that was some of the feedback. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I don't, it sounds to me like you didn't really care, but like I could see for someone who had been in that system for so long, how like if you had grown up in it and were liking that system, that might have hit you wrong. Like, the brothers don't want to date me because they're not attracted to me. They want a different background. But that's how it's supposed to be. That's how dating is supposed to be. It's
okay to be attracted to what you're attracted to.
Right.
And if it's not me, like, okay, like that's fine. That's great. No, we shouldn't go on a date. If they were looking for a particular, like, attraction is totally okay. It's part of the equation. So if you know what you're attracted to, like, go for that. I felt the whole thing was just so weird when it was introduced. There was all this. So then I had to start going on these dates with these people who had just very bluntly been like, I don't want to go on. Like, I will hang out with Nicole. She's great. I love hanging out with her. It was also some of the guys in the church that it probably wouldn't surprise you if I eventually told you who they were. Most of that feedback came from men that eventually left for similar boundary reasons and probably had the fortitude and understood who they were as people. Enough to say no, and eventually also found their way out. Some of them did. Some of them got married, and then I think the person I'm thinking of like ended up leaving with their spouse that they had met there. But we made dating so weird.
You wouldn't. I get the feeling that you would not have wanted what my wife would call a pity date.
No.
Yeah.
No. Thank you.
Yeah. I had no problems with it when I first started, because you're talking. It's funny. I did not date outside. I had no dates prior to the ICOC, and then I leave with my wife. So my entire dating experience is within this bubble. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm one of the people who I know especially someone who ain't got no game. I know we wouldn't last if those rules were erased and we just actually went like the way the rest of the world goes. Like I know this stuff does not fly outside, so I was not delusional in that sense, but I was fired up. I don't want to use that word. I was fired up about it because I was just like, oh, okay, I actually have a dating life now. And I get that, I got that, I'm taking out people who I normally wouldn't ask out if I was actually romantically interested in them. So like on one hand, I'm enjoying the benefits of it because I actually get to interact like that. But on the other hand, I'm like, yeah, this isn't real. And also just in hindsight, not necessarily in hindsight, because I felt this way a little bit while I was still there towards the tail end, but I'm like, y'all, the loss of autonomy on y'all's end, like being, I for the longest I didn't know that y'all weren't allowed to say no. I thought it was just highly encouraged, but that's a whole nother story. Encouraged meaning, peer pressured. But I'm like, yeah, that had to, I mean, it was pressure for us, to have to do it every week, schedule be damned, money be damned. But for y'all to not be able to say no, or to be discipled if you do say no, that's just, and for the record, I know we had you and I had I guess one that got cut short. I think you had something, something with family that happened or something like that. It was a house date. It was at my apartment. But
Oh, I
yeah,
remember that. Yes.
yeah,
Oh, good
yeah,
movie.
I for the record, I was not forced. I was like, Nicole, cool people. I'll take her out. So there was no, like there was no like ear pulling going on. Like, hey man, I think you need to go. That is one thing I'll say. Well, like I don't think I was like your first or anything like that, but I was just like I'm saying this to tell the people at home, even though I had these feelings about the dating system, I was not that brother that was like you had to like forced to go out on dates. Like I may not have done them every single Saturday, but I was like I was known to be a good date. Like I've been several sisters' first date. Like they'd be like, hey, she needs a good date. Oh, get Myron. I don't say that to brag. I say that to say that even though I ultimately, in hindsight, think the system needs to go, I was not rebelling against it in real time. Like, okay, this thing got problems, but I'm still going along with it. But
But you know what's
yeah,
interesting, Myron, is when you liked someone, I don't know if you ever noticed this, if you did actually develop an interest and people found out,
mhm.
My friend Austin covers this in one of his recent his
Oh
podcasts.
yeah, I think I just finished listening to it like this week or the week before. Yeah, I know where you're going. Go for the people at home. Go ahead, but I know where you're
Yeah,
going with
yeah.
this.
So they actually, in both the teen campus and singles ministry, will then have you go on dates with tons of other people except the person you like, so you can focus on
Uh,
your relationship with God and not get too into the other person and stay emotionally pure. And that's where like the encouragement dates like the pity dates were already weird, or the
yeah,
coerced ones were, but as soon as you did like someone, because they were so afraid of you emotionally or spiritually or physically, like
yeah,
doing something wrong, you weren't even allowed to like talk to the person. Almost, you had to schedule phone calls, you had to at least let a certain amount of days in between talking to them. And it's strange, right? Like if you like someone, go on a date with them. It's like very straightforward, and I would even say godly, right? Straight into
yeah.
the
I'm sure my eye rolls are aimed at the situation and not you. I'm like just
for sure.
hearing it all again. Like it I okay, taking back to Walking Dead, one of my favorite quotes. You remember when this is midway through season 6. We're leading into Negan showing up, but he hasn't shown up yet. But Abraham, um, oh, sorry for y'all at home. We were talking before the recording actually started about The Walking Dead. Okay, this isn't coming out of nowhere. Um, Abraham, Sasha, and Daryl are out somewhere, but it's Abraham and Sasha in this building, and there's a zombie like locked in a room, and Abraham was like, I need to go kill it. Sasha's like, leave it alone. I'm like, why won't you leave it alone? And big shout out to the Instagram account, Christians who curse sometimes, because I'm about to quote him verbatim. He said, because loose ends make my ass itch. And that was, so that always stuck with me. Hearing all that you just said about the dating system, the all that makes my behind itch. Seriously, like, because I went through it. I had one girlfriend prior to my wife, and that was like in my early years in the ICOC. You had to go through the whole telephone game of like for say it's me and you. I got to talk to my discipler. He has to talk to your discipler and talk to you, and all that information is going up the pipe through the leadership because they got to approve everything. And you get the green light to take her out once a month, and you get the green light to take her out every other week, and then you get the green light to ask her. I went along with it at the time. Because I had never had a girlfriend. I'm like, I finally get to have a girlfriend. Wow. In hindsight, I'm like, why did I let that, again, I know because I had no backbone back then, but it's like, why, excuse me, did we let ourselves be subject to that? It was so effing crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on one other thing, because you reminded me about this when you mentioned about how just vulnerable things can be. And for everybody at home, I could have made a video about this, but I decided not to, just because there were already enough people talking about it. Big shout out to Shell over at WhatTheFlok. Shout out to Aldo at the Reclamation, because he's also had her on the channel as well. And one of the people involved has actually been interviewed by him a while back. But there's the whole lawsuit thing going on with the ICOC, and you've had your own experience with that. And like I said, y'all, I another reason I shied away from it was because, like, with all the legal things going on with it, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to misstep, overstep, say something wrong. But I'm like, until I have someone who has actually had some kind of experience with it, meaning you. So whatever you are comfortable saying, what has your experience been with the type of abuse that is being talked about in these lawsuits with the ICOC?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share. So I do have some personal ties to what's going on. And I guess what I would say is I want to give validation out there to anyone who feels like they might have been abused, or they were abused. And, you know, even if you're not feeling like you want to come forward, that like, please don't let the church gaslight you into thinking that those things didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, they're very real, and I believe you, and we believe you. But for me personally, I think I was greatly impacted when the lawsuits came out. For anyone on the channel who hasn't heard or, you know, hasn't read about it, just Google Rolling Stone ICOC lawsuits. And there's even a website for it if you want to dig through. Just trigger warning, it's some really heavy stuff.
Yeah.
You know, when all of that came out, the church came out with a letter in direct response to the lawsuits, basically distancing themselves in time and space to that, right? Like they would say, you know, that high control stuff was so long ago, we repented of that, you know, and we take abuse very seriously.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. You know, we take abuse seriously, you know, really making it sound like it was just old members with a grudge, digging up stuff from the past. But the truth is, like, I had actually had something in the very recent, you know, past happen with me, just to remain slightly discreet. I know, Myron, you know what went down, but I basically had something really alarming happen. And to give validation to those that are reporting things, like I did let the right people know. I let them know as things escalated and when I felt unsafe. And then when things got really serious, thinking like there's no way they're not going to do something if I tell them what's going on. I received so much gaslighting. It was, basically, you're overreacting, that's not really happening. I mentioned the police several times, and that's like, whoa, you should never do that to that person. That is a gross overreaction. That is, your brother and sister in Christ, right? And really making me feel like I had lost my mind. And was seeing things, and but I knew, like, by the time it escalated to the level it was at, I had a total breakdown. Was on the phone with my therapist at midnight, afraid for myself and my safety. And I did eventually, like, with the courage of an outside party, which is my therapist, right? Because there was that fear of challenging the authority, right, in the ICOC, and especially on big issues. I didn't want to be humiliated or made an example of. But my therapist really encouraged me, helped me draft basically a letter that put the church on notice, that said, if you don't do something about this, I will. And I documented every time I had asked for help. This email was very long. I had everything, every instance of reporting and all of that, and put them on really heavy notice. And they did react at that point, because I had become a legal liability. And when the proper authorities were involved, they deemed it as something that was credible, and they acted, giving validation to my concern. I realized I wasn't overreacting. Actually, I was probably grossly underreacting. Yes. And just telling myself, trying to comfort myself into downplaying it with them. And at the end of the day, when all the dust settled, the party which this whole thing had happened with was welcomed back at church in the sanctuary with me. And, they sat me down and said, you're both brothers and sisters in Christ. This person said they were sorry. And we believed them. It was wholehearted. They've repented. And, we understand if you're uncomfortable not coming here, but they'll be back at church.
Wow.
And I realized at that moment, not only was I gaslit and like not protected, and I was left really vulnerable and unsafe, but even after the fact, even once the proper authorities were involved, church was still not a safe place for me.
Ooh.
I was still in their minds kind of the off one, I guess.
Yeah.
And they created a safe space for someone who really hurt me. And I had to go find, as the victim, had to go find another place to worship. And that wasn't that long ago. It wasn't, 10 years ago. And I wrote, so when the lawsuits came out, they wrote a letter distancing themselves. And they actually said, if you know of anything, let us know. And they gave all these emails. I wrote to the email. I did not hear back. I actually forwarded my original documentation email. I said, this is a prime example of exactly what these lawsuits are talking about. Covering up, like gaslighting, covering up someone who's doing harm, and then creating a place for them to continue thriving, hurting people. I was like, literally like textbook what's going on in these lawsuits. And I said, I need you to come to the table and make it right with me. And I didn't hear back for a long time. As a matter of fact, I just thought, forgot about me. More letters came out from the church, and I did not receive any more, which told me, oh, so they took me out of the database.
Oh, yeah.
When I became a legal liability to them. Because I had this story that really gave credibility to all this stuff going on, but no one responded to me. Now, I did eventually, I want to be fair in the story and give all the details and say they did eventually write me back. And they basically said, oh, we thought, each one of us thought someone else responded to you. And, I hear that. We're on top of it enough, though, to take me out of the database. You should have been on top of it enough to acknowledge what happened to me and check and double check that someone had gotten back to me. They said that they're having a third party investigate, and that person will be in touch with me. But at this point, I just feel like it did happen. It does happen. That was the culture. It is the culture. They do very that letter actually that they sent, interestingly, Myron, the first letter they sent from the church, they said, we take abuse seriously. If you know of any abuse, contact your ministry leaders.
Not the police, the ministry leaders.
The police. Now, they got huge flack for that. And
as they should.
They issued a their rewrite and said, oh, we just kind of assumed, right, that you would know to contact the police. So they fumbled there, right? But I think that was really revealing, right, that this is the culture. And I just want anyone out there who's either involved in the lawsuits. I know many of you who have been personally impacted. I also know people who are afraid to come forward. There are other stories they have because they're still afraid and they don't want to come forward, and that's okay too. It's your story, it belongs to you. But I just want you to know that you're not crazy. Whatever happened to you, I believe you, and it's safe to come forward if you want to. It was a wild time, Myron, and very hard for me, right? Because it dug up, like, I left the church and then a few months later this all came out. It was really heavy for me because I had to reprocess and deal with something I had just put behind me because I thought would never be addressed or resolved. I just thought that was it. And so I had to relive a lot of it, lots of anxiety, lots of crying. But I think I got to process it in a healthier way. But yeah, it's definitely a wild time. Definitely a wild time.
Wow. To say it sucks to hear all of that. That is a gross understatement. Like I know, like, as a man, I'll never be in y'all's shoes. Like I feel like I understand more than most, but still, it's like it pales to what you actually experience. And it's just like, just to hear you not being safe, to hear they say, oh, well, we don't want this person who actually did the wrong, we don't want them going to a different church because we want them to be safe spiritually, but you can go. Hearing what you said earlier, like how a lot of churches, a lot of our no longer our, a lot of ICOC churches would be like, oh, don't go to this other ministry, they may not be sound. So if that's the same case they're willing to let you go to a place that may not be the best, but this other person, oh no, we need to keep him here. The
option I was really given was, they're like, well, we're going to have a non-armed security guard at the door. We understand if you go.
Wow. That's done. That's done. Yeah. Just thinking about, like, I had a thought and I lost it. Sorry. It's all atrocious. I'll just say that. Just the lack of. Oh, I remember what I was going to say now. Like, this is taking it to a bit, a more broader thing here. But, like, a lot of people always wonder, oh, why did this woman wait so long to say something? Why are no women coming out? All this other kind of, like, because of this, because of things getting swept under the rug, because people not being believed. I could go down the list. This is why women don't say anything. And I've been guilty of wondering that myself long in the past, but, like, from everything I've heard over time, it's just like, I get it, and it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately it is. I'm really hoping that justice gets served with everybody involved, because, like, my fear is any of these things get, if there's like any amount of not guilty happening, what's going to happen. Everybody in church is going to be like, yeah, we won. This was just persecution. You know how we got taught to treat persecution. We got taught to treat persecution as validation of our cause. Oh, this is just an attack. This is just an attack from Satan. This is, Jesus was persecuted, so we should be surprised when we get persecuted. This is persecution for us. I'm like, no. This is not that. So I'm just like, I shudder just to think what the response is going to be if there's any amount of not justice being served with that. But yeah. All right, I'm gonna come off of that because I'm internally pissed hearing all of that. No more than you were, I can imagine. But so your life after leaving, what would you say your life is like? Because there's that there's that stigma or that statement that, oh, people who leave the church, they're your life is going to get worse if you leave. You're going to do a downward spiral, or you're going to get wrapped up in sin. Has any of that happened to you since leaving?
Great question. No, I'm still a woman who loves God with great conviction.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I remember someone texting me surrounding when my husband and I left,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of wrote me this gloom and doom text of how they were so disappointed in my decision to do it outside, and marry outside the ICOC, and how they've only seen two people do it before, and they both fell into grave sin. It's not possible to do it. Only
Mm.
people who date and marry within the ICOC stay faithful. And I just remember I responded to her, and I was like, "Do you even know him or his conviction? It's like, or are you just going to judge him based on his affiliation in church and where he was baptized?"
Right.
Because I tell people, like, surprise, like I still have my convictions even when I'm not part of the specific church. And so my relationship with my now husband looked exactly the same as you would expect it in
Mm.
any spiritual Christian dating relationship with good boundaries. And he and I are still on a journey together of figuring out what God wants for our life, and where God's taking us next. And we're doing it together. Super proud of him. Super proud of who he is in God. He's a really wonderful man with solid values and convictions, and very proud to be his wife. And on this journey with him, my life has not spiraled out of control. If anything, I think my goal so as a Christian, I love the idea that the two greatest commands are love God and love people.
Yeah.
And my favorite scripture even is, about how the law is fulfilled by love one another.
Yeah.
And so since I've left, that's really been my focus of just how can I be radically loving, inclusive, and safe for anyone I come in contact with. And I would actually say then that my life has continued to improve.
Got
Not
better.
that I've had I stayed, right? But that, like, I'm on this trajectory that I'm really happy with, and are going to work on it every day for the rest of my life. But my life did not spiral out of control after I left.
So your life's not in shambles.
No, it's not.
So
Surprise.
you don't have any like Ouija boards and any other like Satan worshiping things off camera that you hid before we started. I'm being sarcastic, yes, but
Yeah, no,
yeah, yeah.
I have not gone off.
You're flourishing. You're doing better now that you're gone.
Yeah, I am. Yes.
Cool. Amen to that. Amen to that. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to say to anybody who might be listening, whether it's people who are still there and they're like, you guys are, slandering the church, or it's somebody who's left and they need validation, or somebody who is still there but want to leave but scared to leave? Anybody out there, what anything that you might want to say to anybody?
Yeah, I would say there's probably two groups of people I would want to say something to. The first one is the people who are curious about the outside but have not yet left, or they have to stay. And that is, I think, one of the most healing things for me was to go out and just be in fellowship with other Christians, because they are just as amazing and loving and wonderful as anyone on the inside. They're not exclusive to the ICOC, and it takes some time to heal. But, don't be afraid just to go visit someone else's worship night, or grab coffee with your Christian coworker that shares values with you, that's not from the ICOC, but is a perfectly nice, person.
Yeah.
The other people I would say something to is those, my many friends who have left and just feel so jaded and have said, if this is what God is, I don't want it. My husband and I went through this course called Alpha. It's offered at a lot of nationwide, actually worldwide. And it's interesting that the setup where they create a space, it's hosted by usually someone from the church, but their job is actually not to teach. It's just to facilitate. They cover basic topics that actually are typically challenging, that people really need to wrestle through. And then they have discussion groups where you can actually lay out your issues with the Holy Spirit. Someone might say, like, I feel like the idea of the Holy Spirit has been manipulated and used against me.
Yeah.
You know, and so I have a lot of issues I need to work through with that. I don't even know if I believe that, right? Anything goes. And it's a really safe space. And you can really sort out how you feel about things and walk away with your faith intact and kind of separate toxicness. And it's called alpha because it's like, it's just the beginning. It's before you even get to, I want to be a Christian. It's a step before that of what are your hangups with modern Christianity, and not how can we fix those? It's let's talk about it so you end up in a place where you feel good about. So I would just say, like, if faith is important to you, but something got mixed up along the way in the ICOC for you, whatever you can do to separate God from this system, from these people and the way they treated you, like if you want to have faith, you should be able to have it. And he's a good God and not what you were sold when you were in the church.
Amen to that. That is beautiful. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on here, sticking with me for a whole hour and a half, commiserating with me. Thank you for being vulnerable with all of your story. I know not all of it was easy to tell and reminisce on, but I thank you. There's going to be people who watch this who thank you for sharing all of that, being real about it all. Thank you for what you've taught me. Thank you for your patience with me. All of that. So I appreciate you coming on here. Everybody who's watching, thank y'all for watching it for however long you watch it. I know my videos are long. I don't know how many y'all stick through the whole thing, how many y'all watch it in chunks. You know, I watch and listen to things that are long, and I don't always do it in one sitting. So if y'all don't swallow it all at once, I totally understand, because that's me. If y'all watch for 5 minutes and hang up, whatever, thank y'all. Y'all, I don't know why I'm tongue-tied right now. I didn't eat peanut butter or nothing like that before this. Everyone, y'all have a good night. Thank you for joining us. I will, everybody, I know I've been saying this for months, but if you are wanting to be interviewed, if you want to get on here and just tell your story, I will get to you sometime soon. It will happen. Y'all make sure y'all hit that like button, that subscribe button, that share button, all the stuff that everybody on YouTube has to say on their channels. Again, I'm not here for the likes. I'm just here to let y'all know that y'all ain't crazy if you left. I'm here to validate. I'm here to say I'm with you. We went through the same thing together. Yeah, I'm here to validate you. That's it. Y'all have a good night, and I will see y'all at the next video. Peace.